right, so hello everybody. I'm here with the incomparable coach, Brian Johnson, my favorite coach, the coach that I go to when I have issues with my gymnastics. And so he's been having issues, and I'm going to let Brian talk to you about his issues.
I have junky wrists and forearms. There's really no need to go any further than that.
Okay, but elaborate. Like, what movements have been really shitty for you?
Wrist extension, any elbow flexion. So movements like working towards a one-arm chin up. There's obviously a lot of stress going through the elbow. The handstand, getting a full elbow extension, so straight arm in that handstand. Due to just, again, clunky, gunky,
forearms.
Tight, sore forearms.
Why don't you give the people out there a little bit of a background, because you didn't actually do the Ido stuff right away. You found it about 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, I actually found it about 5-6 years ago and just played around with some of that on my own. And then, I've gone through all of the typical ones out there: gymnastic bodies, gold medal bodies, and then after that got into rock climbing. So I did a lot of rock climbing, and then decided it was time to take the Ido plunge. So 2 years ago started working with Ido.
So like really seriously 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, seriously, like 6-7 days a week.
But before that you were like kind of flitting around. You had done some bodybuilding, right?
Did some bodybuilding, floated around, just kind of playing around with some calisthenic work. And some really just like terrible form, body weight training, gymnastic style strength training. It just looked horrible. Okay,
so one of his issues is that he complains about like kind of pinching on the wrist area.
Yeah, it's not closing angle pain. It's really more around the thumb, that extensor.
So he has an issue, and when I actually evaluate his thumb, I'm looking for whether or not it can abduct well, right? Because your thumb actually has a bunch of muscles on its own. And abduction is, we are human, so we can do this, and then we can do that. Now, in gymnastics, because I also do a lot of gymnastics, you know that you actually put a lot of pressure in here, right? And during wrist preparation, I've noticed that it's a lot of flexor digitorum stuff, but it's never really any type of abduction or thumb stuff, which the thumb is actually what's mostly helping you balance. It's your big toe on your hand, basically. And so when patients have issues like that, especially like somebody who's as strong as Brian, and I know I've seen his handstands that are great, and he has obviously good range of motion, not fantastic, but he does have basically almost that 90 degrees. But when I evaluate his thumb, he doesn't have enough abduction. So how do we do that? You can do a lot of different things, whereas you can do ART, FDM, and all that fun stuff into his abductor. But I find that the fastest way and the better way of doing this is needling.
It's to torture me.
Well, it's not really torture if it's there to heal you. So what I do is, you can draw a needle into the abductor by the dorsum of the hand. What we're going to go is the muscle goes from the middle of your hand, spreads out, and then goes into here. So how we do that is we find his first metatarsal, and then we go into it like so. And I'm really looking for that abductor. Now, I'm into it. What I'm going to see is whether or not I'm on it. Now, if I'm on it, you'll see that his thumb is just going to move and nothing else. And you see that abduction right there. And so I know that it's uncomfortable. Is it uncomfortable?
Yeah, it was odd.
Yeah, it's definitely odd. When I had to get this done, when I was learning it, I was like, damn it.
You felt sorry for the patient.
Right, I felt sorry for the patient, which is another thing, which is, I practice what I preach. So there's nothing that I make a patient do that I haven't done myself. And so I know how this feels, and I know that it's not comfortable, but I also know that it works. So what we're going to do is we're going to dry needle this area, and we're going to test and retest. Just like that.
So what you're saying is I need to come in before every handstand workout and get
always
that done.
only during your handstand workouts. And you can feel like right there
Yeah.
and on that trigger point.
Yeah.
And it totally sucks. So there's another muscle that attaches to the thumb, and it's called your flexor hallucis longus, and it attaches to the distal 1/3 of your radius. And how we find that is we dig a little deeper here, and you can feel that muscle. So I'm on it. It's a big muscle. It becomes tendon all the way down here. So those are the tendons that you're seeing. So it's actually a little bit higher than most people believe or know it to be. We're going to go into that muscle. And again, when I needle this area, what I'm trying to do is just trying to decrease some of the tension in the actual muscle to allow him to get into that range of motion, because I know that he has the strength there. So we got to go past your flexor, and then we get onto that bone. You feel that, right?
How's that?
And then what we're going to do is, again, if I'm on this, you're going to see just your thumb flex. Feel it moving, and there you go, right on it. Isn't that weird? Now, as I'm kind of stimming it, I actually can now have a better understanding of how dysfunctional it is. I'm always checking for how much energy I'm putting into this.
You've got it amped up.
I
don't
got
you?
it. I do. I have it amped up, and it's barely even moving. And if you see me doing it on like a healthy muscle, this would be going like out of control, but it's only just a little bit of a, you see it right there, this thumb, just a little bit of a boop, boop, boop.
Moved it a little bit, and
Yeah.
it definitely intensified.
Yeah, so you want to just kind of relax. That's a great, I'm glad that you did that so everybody can see what happens when you move when I'm needling you. Don't move. That's why I always tell you to not move. Okay, so that's one area. Now, people tend to think about tissue as being like individualistic, like, oh, it's just this one muscle and it's this one muscle. But muscle, you don't just turn on that one muscle to get into full extension or flexion. You turn on all of the muscles. So you can't just individually just do one or two muscles. You have to think about the muscle as a whole and what else would help you in flexion. And obviously, a big wrist flexor is your flexor digitorum superficialis, which comes from the medial portion and then comes up and into your hand like so.
I feel like that one's going to be an issue.
Yeah, so we definitely have to go into it. We can't ignore it. And, when in Rome, right?
Why not? Yeah, that one feels really gnarly.
Yeah, it does feel real gnarly. So while we're here, we might as well talk about all kinds of wonderful
Talk about
stuff.
the future.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about some stuff.
What's on your mind, Doc?
Well, let's kind of talk about kind of progression and how long it takes for kind of your muscle and your joints to be able to do the things that we both do. I mean, you obviously do it at a much higher level, and I'm starting to feel it now that I'm doing 2-a-days. But why don't you talk about kind of the progression, because you have, a really great front lever, or working towards that front lever. You're very close to it.
Very
Handstand is great. All of your kind of basic gymnastic movements are fantastic, and talk about the beginnings of when you first started with Ido.
It was terrible.
The first year.
Yeah, well, terrible in the sense that I wasn't prepared both mentally and physically.
Uh-huh.
I'd come from this background of, I'd go in and do my 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was all obviously muscular focused.
Yeah.
And gymnastic, the Ido stuff isn't all gymnastic strength, but there's a lot of emphasis on connective tissue and
Uh-huh.
ligamentous and all that, and I didn't realize the importance of having that layer, I guess, established.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what we're doing. Well, not what we're doing now necessarily, but that was a big component of the training. So I didn't realize how long it would take me to actually progress through that. Let's say 9 to 12 months of just reorienting or reorganizing that tissue. But as far as the progression from the movement side, that aside, it's definitely a practice of patience.
Yeah.
It takes, I think a lot of people tend to go right in and they're like trying to do a front lever in a month, and it's just not gonna happen. I mean, most of these, the long game is kind of really what it's about. Most of these movements, generally, and one of the things Ido says is, you can take somebody who comes into this kind of movement culture and in 2 years have a pretty impressive toolbox or skill set. And just using myself as an example, coming up on 2 years, working towards a full front lever, some great integrated ring work, one arm handstand, planches, like all kinds of great kind of fun little isolated strength movements. And it's been a good learning curve
experience,
just for the body and movement in general. So
there's a bunch of things that I kind of want to go into more detail about that. That's great. But we talk about connective tissue strength, and a lot of what people think about fitness is that I feel like they believe in, not believe, but they have the auspicion of using the perspective of bodybuilding, which is I'm isolating one muscle and this is what I'm doing. I'm making this bigger and I'm making it better, right? But in kind of connective tissue strength and kind of in the movement culture is you have to think about the lines of strength, right? Like we call it straight arm strength, bent arm strength, right? Which is a grouping of muscle, and in that grouping of muscle has this fascia, connective tissue around it, and it takes time for all of that to get strong, to catch up, to make sure that it doesn't tear or break. And oftentimes we forget that muscle definitely grows faster than ligaments and tendons, and you have to do things in a nice slow progression way. You might get strong in your muscle belly, but that doesn't mean that your ligaments or your connective tissue caught up to that. And so that's why there's so much progression in and around, doing a lot of the movement stuff, because you can get into dangerous positions, and you obviously don't want to do a handstand and your shoulder kind of give out on you, right?
Yeah, and I think that's something that definitely, so if you take, for example, the bodybuilding culture, or most specialties do not talk about connective tissue.
No, they don't, ever.
Unless you're maybe a high-level gymnast or, a rock climber or, somebody that has to really heavily rely on that. But, man, I'm finding that is maybe as, if not more important than the muscle, kind of that muscle belly, muscle strength. Yeah.
And then there's the other component of it, which is your nervous system, right? Your nervous system needs to learn that type of movement, right? Like the reason why you're not getting into a front lever or a handstand right away is because your body still needs to connect to your muscles and be able to synchronize, okay, this is what the movement of a handstand is. So your nervous system is constantly adapting and reworking and learning. And if you actually, in any NASM or CSCS book or whatever your affiliation is, they always note that the first part of muscle strength comes from neurology. It comes from turning on more motor units into the actual muscle so that you can get stronger into it. So, there's two ways of making you strong. There's a lot of different ways to actually making you strong, but one of the ways is turning on more motor units into the muscle so that you get more muscle fibers turned on. And I think that's another thing that we don't actually talk about in kind of connective tissue strength, is that, yeah, you're just getting stronger because your brain is more efficient at turning on all of the muscles in your extensors or all of the muscles in your flexors. And that takes time too.
Yeah, I think that goes into the idea of having a consistent practice. I mean, I think there's Charles Poliquin has a pretty cool saying. It's this idea of within the fitness industry at least, this idea of entertainment.
Yeah.
So it's like people just really want to be entertained.
Yeah.
Like it's fun to go to a handstand workshop, but if you don't do the handstand almost every day, you're not going to get there.
Yeah, and that's a great.
Which is that nervous system
Yeah.
kind of reinforcement.
Right. That's something great to kind of talk about, which is, consistency and structure over a couple of weeks, over a couple of months is a lot better than just kind of burning out after the first 2 months, right? And a lot of my practice has been going around consistency and making sure that I touch the handstand every single day. I touch ring work every single day. I don't kind of get away from it because I do feel that every time I do go away from it for a day or two, I feel like I lose it a little bit. And that has something to do with your nervous system being attenuated to that type of movement, but also your muscles being able to handle that type of load over a long, small loads over a long period of time will help you, give you muscular endurance and muscular strength.
Yeah, and I think there's something too that gets missed in terms of on the mental side, which is having some sort of understanding that there's going to be days that you don't want to do that, whatever that practice is, but and to switch it up is fine on occasion, but to have the wherewithal to stick with it. I think about the two things that I've been from a movement perspective, if you consider bodybuilding that, decent in, it's putting on muscle mass, but that was consistent. It was a consistent routine that I followed for 8 to 12 weeks.
Right.
Or this gymnastic style strength training or the EATO work. I think the reason I've progressed is because it's been a set program for 8 to 12 weeks. So there's consistency, there's that continual practice versus just something new every single day.
Yeah. And that mental part of it is just the grind. There's no way around it, like you watch all these gymnasts do this in Rio and stuff like that, and I see a lot of gymnasts in my practice and they do the same thing day in, day out for like 6-7 hours a day. And, we all have hubris and we think, we can go into the gym and then just immediately learn how to do a handstand in 10 minutes, and it doesn't work like that, And I've been working on my handstand for a better part of like 6-7 months now. It's getting better, but it's nowhere near where I would be like, I can do a free standing handstand, not moving for a minute, because that's really the gold standard.
Yeah.
That's the standard. And so being consistent and doing it every single day, and if you ever watch me practice here at Tiger's Den, in the mornings it looks like it's boring work. I just do the same thing in and out.
Yeah, and I think that it's funny, the people that see me practice, at the same time, roughly like every day, they probably just think that I'm the handstand guy.
Yeah.
They don't see the rings, they don't see all the other locomotion. Because I'm there at that same time every day, they're like, wow, this guy must just be doing handstands. It's not the case, but it is something that you have to practice almost every day. Like most new skills that you want to learn, you have to put the time in. So.
Yeah. There's no way around it. You cannot shortcut that. So what about variation in your programming? We had this discussion the other day, which is I was like, do you think I should just do all skill-oriented type on one day? Do you think I should do strength on another day? Do you think I should be lifting on, as cross-training on another day? What is your philosophy on, skill work as to strength work, as to, just strength work?
Yeah, the way EATO lays it out, at least for me, I can kind of base it off of that. I know there's different programs out there that are a little different. It's a combination.
Yeah.
So I'll have if I'm doing bent or straight arm strength that day, as well as hand balancing is almost every single day.
Yeah.
The skill work I've found is for me, generally done better actually after my strength work, but later in the day.
Yeah.
So like I don't generally start with hand balancing in the morning.
Uh-huh.
It would be just knocking out whatever, But I think that the reason for that is because I've already kind of gotten past this point of working on, there is some strength components to the handstand.
Yeah.
But I'm already past that point to where
Yeah.
now it's just fine-tuning that skill. So maybe in the beginning, if you're working straight arm strength, for example, you could tie the handstand in with that.
Yeah.
But then after that, it's, more kind of oriented skill work and also focusing on lower body mobility.
And so you generally, take out the strength work in the mornings, right?
Yeah.
And then you do the skill work in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why that works really well is it gives time for the nervous system to regenerate, and you're like, okay, I can now do more detailed, fine movements. And I think, if you look at, studies of like when men have best testosterone,
It's like
and
9, 10 in the morning.
Yeah. It's right in the morning,
cortisol
right?
peak.
The cortisol peak. So, you have 2 windows. Generally, they're in the morning and then late afternoon. And I tend to like to do my strength work at the beginning, in the mornings, and then do my skill work at night.
Well, and I think part of that too for me is the cognitive piece, right? It's like in the morning, some people are still a little foggy, trying to do some really kind of fine-tuned, nimble work. It's a lot more challenging than if you're alert and a little bit more awake.
No, I agree, and I find that I can pay attention more to what my hands are doing when I'm doing like handstand work, which is I think a topic that we can go on for probably an hour. But I find that I have better detailed work and better attention to what's going on in my hands when I'm doing handstand work in the afternoon than I am in the morning, because I feel like in the morning I'm just like, I just need to get through this.
Yeah.
And then,
plow through the strength stuff.
Yeah, right. All right, we finished with his
Sweet.
arm. We'll know in a day or two whether.
Wow, I can actually move it now.
Brian is one of my favorite coaches. I love talking to him. Hopefully, we get to do a lot more talking about this type of stuff in the near future. And if you need to get a hold of Brian, what's a good way of getting a hold of you?
Just come see me at off Henderson,
Yeah.
1834 North Henderson. No, you can email me, bajohnson32 at gmail.com.
And what's your Instagram handle?
Instagram, Brian with an I, Brian Movement.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, check it out.
So I'll also put that all in the wonderful show notes and details and stuff like that. And thanks for hanging out with us.